Oh, is my mic on? I guess it is. The little green light didn't turn on, so I thought maybe it wasn't. Sorry. Anyhow, good afternoon. I'm going to call to order the Nashville MTA board meeting, and first on our list is a roll call. Jessica Dolphin.
Present.
Mary Griffin.
Here.
Janet Miller.
Present.
Walter Searcy.
I'm here.
And Gail Carr Williams is present. If I can have a motion for approval of the June 23rd, 2022 minutes.
Motion.
Second, Janet Miller.
There's a motion and there's a second. Is there any additions, corrections, deletions? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sounds good. We have minutes. Next, I have public comment section. I don't have any. Do I have? Oh, my swag was on top of it. I apologize. I don't know. Mario Sanders Patterson. I think I have that correct. Marcia. I'm sorry, Marcia. I didn't see that I in there, so.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Just so you know, we have a 3-minute limitation on
No
public
problem.
comments. Okay, thank you.
I'm here today to recommend that some changes to be made to the policy and procedures for access ride for senior citizens and disabled. It's not very friendly as far as disabled people having a ride. There's one policy where they will not call you if they pull up. You have to be looking for them or be outside waiting. And in 110-degree weather, I can't stand outside for 30 minutes. They have a window of 30 minutes. They may show up in 30 minutes, they may not. I've had them come, take as long as 45 minutes. And so they will not call, and they say that you have to be watching for them. That's a little difficult for someone that's in this heat to have to stand outside and wait for access. We have a 5-minute window. If we are not there in 5 minutes, they leave us. Reservations, wonderful. Scheduling, very rude. Cannot get them to call you back. I had a driver with one of your contractors pull off while I was standing in the bus. Well, it wasn't a bus, it was a van. And I want to thank Access for sending me a letter with 3 free rides. The vehicles are not being inspected. The drivers are not being drug tested. Now, it may or may not be a requirement, but for the federal contracts, I worked for TDOT myself for over 15 years. I know federal contracts. This should not be happening. If the vehicles are not being inspected and the drivers are not being drug tested, it's very unsafe. I've had them where I've worked with people on drugs in other communities. I know when someone's on drugs and driving, and that should not be happening. I realize a lot of this is federal money. The taxi drivers, excellent. They get out of the taxis, pick you up, your bags, help you in to the vehicle, and usually if the vehicle is not good, you just tell them and they'll get another vehicle. The buses, 80% of the drivers are good, 20% of them will not call, and they will go off and leave you. The vans with mobility solutions are not built for handicapped people like I am. They are for wheelchair recipients, but not handicapped people. I've called numerous times and tried to talk to Access about it with no satisfaction. So I thought maybe I could stop and talk to the board and see if some of the policies and procedures that they're working under now could be changed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't have any other public comments. Are there any other public comments? Anyone else wishing to give a comment that's not filled out the form? Hearing none and seeing no hands up, that will close our public comment section today. Thank you very much. you know, we're sort of working with this new agenda and, some additions, which I like. So we have the information-only items that are together, the monthly financial report, the monthly operating statistic, and the upcoming procurements. Do any of our board members have any questions for anyone responsible for those reports? And that would be either Ed, Andy, or probably Rita for the upcoming procurement projects. If there are none, we will just make certain that you pay mindful attention to the reports that are in our board book.
Gail, can I ask a question? So I like the new agenda, the way we have it set. Just want to confirm that if there was anything that Ed saw that we needed to discuss or in these reports, that they would bring it to us. I mean,
Absolutely.
right, so, because I looked at them and there was nothing unusual, just kind of like business as usual. But I just thought it would be good for the record for us to say that we're not doing financials, we're just, if there's not an issue, then kind of moving on. Does that make sense?
When, at the staff level, when we go through the agendas before they're published, we check in with everybody, and if there's an item we're looking at for consent, if there's any issue that's out of the ordinary, then we move it off. And obviously, as part of this process, if any member wants to pull something off
Yes.
the consent.
Okay,
you're
good. I
certainly
just
free
wanted to
do that.
clarify for the group, so thank you.
And I will just add this, because this is sort of first time we're doing this, but I thought the narratives that were included in the booklet were very good and outlined a lot, so thank you for those narratives. Okay, that being said, we'll move on to, we have no consent agenda items on today's agenda, so I will move down to operations and finance with our chair, Mr. Searcy.
Well, what we have first up is the central parking lease option. And we have a recommendation from the staff to adopt the amendment proposed to continue through the calendar year 2022 with an option for 2023. Are there any questions anybody has about
Ed, do you want to give us some
that?
I can. Okay, I'll give you some background. On page 17 of the pack, as Walter said, is the action item for Premier Parking Contract managing the Wigo garage, which was competitively bid, by the way, in 2018 and re-awarded to Premier since they've had it in the previous 5-year contract starting in 2014. As you read through that, I do want to make sure there's no confusion. Premier Parking has recently changed its name. They merged with their longtime technology partner, Metropolis, and moved to that name. It does not impact the contract nor the lease terms. The current contract was a 3-year contract beginning in January of 2019 with 2 one-year options to ultimately expire in 2023. It's a fixed fee contract that averaged between $92,000 and $99,000 a month based on annual incremental increases that occurred during the 5 years. Unfortunately, if you'll recall, back in 2020, as a result of the pandemic reducing the use of the parking garage, as well as everything else, and MTA receiving the CARES Act funding, the board approved entering into a rent abatement agreement that allowed Metropolis to maintain its employees, and MTA would receive 50% of the gross monthly rents. One of the goals of the CARES Act from FTA's perspective was to assist partners like Metropolis to keep them as whole as possible and help them maintain their employees. The abatement agreement remained in effect as long as both parties agreed, and it would return to a contract basically when they both agreed to, and it basically suspended the original terms of the contract. By the way, Metropolis has been successful in retaining its employees during the abatement period. As you know, just like our ridership, patronage levels at the parking garage are being slow to return, and with the abatement actually extending beyond the actual beginning of the end of the contract, which ended in December of 21, because it was a 3-year contract. We began discussions with Metropolis in January to define some time frame to move back to a full contract that was still in the spirit of and within the time frame of the original 5-year contract. During our back and forth, actually in February, Metropolis agreed to up the abatement percentage from 50 to 75% while we worked through the contract, or through the amendment for the contract. Now, let me give you some context to this. Pre-pandemic, Metropolis was actually averaging about $130,000 in monthly gross rents, We were receiving about 95,000 of that. So we were actually receiving about 73% of the monthly gross rents. However, during the abatement period, Metropolis's rents averaged $33,000 a month, which was about 25% of pre-pandemic levels. Rolling into 2022, they're about back to 60% and about 80,000 in monthly rents, but we still had some work to do. So what this proposed amendment is doing today, it's basically defining a path for getting back to a full fixed fee contract sometime during calendar 22. We're proposing in the amendment that when Metropolis achieves a gross rent level of at least $115,000, the rent would revert back to a fixed fee of about $97,277, which is about 84% of gross rents at that level. Hopefully they will improve, but it's consistent basically with the first option year of the original contract. So even in future months, if it falls below 115 after it's achieved that, the fixed fee will stay in place. It will not revert back to anything else. Under the amendment, MTA will continue to receive 75% of the monthly gross rents until that 115,000 is achieved. The amendment also has verbiage that allows MTA to audit or monitor Metropolis's financial records for obvious reasons. And it would also include an additional option year, as Walter alluded to, consistent with the second option year of the original contract, and the rents would go to $99,000 for the calendar year 2023. In talking with Metropolis, they basically felt like that the 115 was a fair number to achieve to start paying the full rent, and they felt like it would probably be able to be achieved probably sometime this fall, so we would be able to get back to full contract. So we believe this is the right direction for us to go for a couple of reasons. Number one, it stabilizes our rent, potentially at a higher return on the actual gross rent at 84.5% than what we had pre-pandemic. It also, if we assume we're going to exercise fiscal year 2023, again, it will keep rents stable. But more importantly, it will give us continued time for recovery out of the pandemic, because since that's the last year of the contract, we will be going back out for RFP mid-year 2023 for a new contract starting in January of 24. So we wanted to give more time, because we felt if we tried to go out to RFP right now, based on economic conditions, we would not probably receive anything close to what we're proposing here. So, and one additional item, we did review this with Tyler Yarbrough at Dodson Parker with her input and recommendations. And basically that concludes my report and gives you the background that we need to make a decision. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
When do they anticipate going back to pre-pandemic?
They think that they'll hit that 115,000 probably sometime first or early fall. They're at the 80,000 level. They're seeing between 80 and 100,000 right now. They say typically the summer does drop off a little bit, but they expect it to come back. And just like Steve, what we've been saying, as soon as businesses decide to come back to the downtown, there'll be more people parking. And we'll have more events downtown too, because it's utilized a lot on the weekends for events as well.
What is the typical summer drop-off?
They see it typically between 20 and 30%. In June, well, for instance, in June, they saw it drop down to 60,000. That we
That's
already
this
know.
June.
That the June we just passed.
But pre-pandemic June?
No. In pre-pandemic, they saw it drop maybe to about 100,000, 90 to 100. But right now, it's dropping a little bit more. So.
But at 80 now?
Correct.
It'll be super interesting with the state sending so many employees home for good to see if they get back to it. This might be our new world, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, obviously, when the legislature's in session, it does well.
It's full all the time, yeah. Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Thanks, Ed. Well, I'm going to request that we adopt the recommendation of staff and approve the lease option for both years.
So that is a recommendation of a committee to approve the proposed amendment, not requiring a second. Is there any discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. You have your amended contract.
Okay, the next item we have on operations and finance is the purchase of 40 body-on-chassis buses. Let's have, obviously, the recommendation is to purchase them, so let's hear some background on that.
All right, thank you, Chair and members of the board. As Mr. Searcy alluded to, this very well could have been placed on the newly adopted consent agenda, but I wanted to kind of just take this opportunity and discuss with you the body and chassis crisis that we're currently seeing in the industry. As you may have heard, chassis manufacturers, we kind of have a choke in the pipeline for cutaway buses, which are used for access. It's not just impacting the transit industry, but it's also impacting fire departments, ambulances, and other organizations that utilize the cutaway bus in their fleet makeup. So this is due to a general shortage of microchips used in the automotive industry, and this put chassis suppliers to make the business decision to deploy their chips to the more profitable products. And not only just the microchips, there was also supply chain issues that happening across many industries driving up prices. So think of your groceries, clothing, retail, cars. So this is just impacting many different industries. Not only do we have that, but now we're starting to see that the chassis manufacturers are being able to increase their production. However, now there's just a backlog that they're trying to catch up on. So at this point, we're at a critical point where we're needing multiple eyes from various layers in the industry, government officials, national trade associations, and other leadership positions on the issue. So without these vehicles, I just really wanted to express the concern for the stability of our riders in the future. Currently, our fleet is 50% of our cutaway fleet at the moment is beyond their useful life. Cutaways are usually around 5 years, and 50% of our current fleet is beyond that. Staff have already begun mitigation strategies utilizing capital funds in an overhaul program costing around $1.1 million. These funds are going to be used to buy the necessary parts to prolong the cutaway fleet beyond their useful life. However, it's not going to solve the problem because there's only so many engines and transmissions you can replace without replacing the structure of the vehicle. In our fleet plan, we procure about 20 to 25 cutaways per year. Currently, we're awaiting an order of 25 cutaways that was approved back in February of 2021. These vehicles should have arrived in November of last year. Unfortunately, due to the constraints that I'm describing with the supply chain and all the other circumstances against us, we haven't gotten a confirmed date as of yet. We have also received notification from this provider for a price increase of about 40%, which we originally had a purchase order for this. So staff is meeting and reviewing the options on this matter. But I guess I just wanted to say this is the world we're living in right now. Bus providers are having to backdate orders and are requesting price adjustments due to the number of concerns in the industry. Some agencies are agreeable, but some are even just canceling their orders and seeking alternative options. For us, we did begin discussing, we would be open to price negotiations. However, we would like to get some assurances on delivery schedules. And currently, those are hard to provide. So with that being said, I want to express that this contract is important because we just need to get in line. We might not have a necessary hard date of when these will be here, whether these vehicles show up 1, 2, 3 years from now. I want to get us in the queue so that way we can start moving forward. Again, staff are looking at alternative options. We're working with our KFH consulting team with Access regarding a mixed fleet, introducing different types of vehicles if we can do that to serve our Access consumers. And the other thing I also want to just bring up is I'm very happy to say that this hasn't impacted our heavy duty buses, knock on wood. We're still slated for delivery for the 14 Arctics by the end of this year and 20 of our 40-foot coaches by spring of next year. I was actually just a part of the Maintenance Alliance group, and I was talking to some of our vendors. And a lot of these transit agencies are brainstorming and coming together on how we can address these concerns. Again, these cutaways are a necessity for folks with disabilities utilizing Access, as cutaways are predominantly used for our Access program, but they are also used for our lower ridership fixed routes. So I'm going to refer back to your packets on page 18, as this is an action item, to have the board provide the CEO authority to approve the purchase contract for 40 body-on-chassis cutaways from Southern Bus and Mobility with a total budget of $8,520,306, contingent upon the completion of a satisfactory Buy America pre-award audit. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Now, does that figure, Andy, reflect the 40% increase?
That 40% increase was with a current contract that we already have in a current order.
Current contract.
Yeah, and a current purchase order. So we're looking at this and saying, well, we already had a purchase order and they're not able to deliver on that. So we are looking at options and seeing how we can work through that. But again, if we're going to consider negotiating on price, we want some assurances on a delivery schedule or that we can actually see these vehicles at some point. Because if we already had a purchase order for this price, for this delivery schedule, and that wasn't completed,
Yeah, I mean, how can we rely on the 8 million as being the firm price?
So this contract that I'm talking about, these 40 cutaways, this is for an upcoming purchase. The 25 that I'm referring to.
No, I understand.
Okay.
But we get down to payment, and what's to stop them from asking for a premium at that point? Conditions have changed, market circumstances as such.
So in the contract, we do have some contingencies regarding I believe it's 6 weeks ahead of time because they might have some adjustments in their pricing that they need to come to us. This $8.5 million does have a 20% kind of contingency built into it. So originally, we're looking at a submitted price of $157,000 per bus. That's for our access configuration, and then $197,000 for our fixed route configuration. So that's going to come to a total of $7.1 million. And so we built in a contingency to ensure that if there are some price adjustments over the course of the next couple months, years, depending on where the status of affairs go. But we wanted to make sure that we get in the queue so that when hopefully this chip shortage and some of these supply chain issues start to resolve, we're in the line to get these buses.
A lot of what was in the contract, Walter, is tied to things like producer price index, so they have to document, where any of those price increases come from. A concern on the original contract, as Andy alluded to, we're kind of going back and forth on options, is just to some extent, now the vendor who's bidding on this, it was the only bid we got for all of these reasons. But it's actually a reasonable price. Some of the concern we have on the prior agreement is, to what extent are people saying, well, I've only got 10% of the chassis I need, so let's go into a bidding war. And frankly, that's not good for anybody. And that's where we've been actively participating with Tennessee Public Transit Association, Community Transportation Association of America. We're members of the Bus Coalition and the American Public Transportation Association to raise this at the federal level, including potential options like looking for Buy America waivers. In fact, actually, the FTA has a notice of proposed rulemaking out now on a Buy America waiver on a smaller vehicle, on vans that are more appropriate in the van pool type of arrangement, but potentially looking at that. And even some folks starting to talk about invoking the War Production Act to basically force, because to Andy's point, to some extent, the bus manufacturers have their hands tied because they're at the mercy of the chassis builder. And when you can make, 40% profit on a pickup truck versus 15% on this type of vehicle, then, you're inclined to go in a different direction. So but it is at least a national problem, probably more like a worldwide problem.
Okay.
Feels that way. It's nice to get
All right, the recommendation is to the board that we adopt the purchase of, or getting in the queue for purchase of 40. Someday, yes.
over the rainbow.
The body on chassis vehicle.
Okay, we have a recommendation from the committee. Is there any further discussion, any questions for Mr. Searcy or for Andy?
I would just say thank you to the staff for, I mean, you're juggling 100 plates and it's hard. So thank you for being so thoughtful and creative about getting us in line. That's what I would say.
So the main, one of the downsides is it may be a while before the last blue and white small bus leaves the fleet.
Disappears.
And thank you also for, you know, putting this in front of us and giving the explanation. I think these are the kinds of things that, you know, are perhaps not out of the ordinary for the times that we're in, but, you know, we are being live as well. I think folks need to understand why things are slowed down or why we don't have, you know, a new bus, et cetera. And so, you know, I thank you again, this is a public hearing for people being able to understand, you know, the why of some of what's going on. Thank you.
Anything, anybody else? Okay, we have a recommendation, and so at this point, I will call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have 40 body on chassis buses in line.
Online.
In line, no, we don't.
Maybe at some
We're
point
line-
in the
We're in
future.
line, we're in line. I don't know what our place is in line. What's your number, right?
Well, I just.
Challenging
one-
times.
One last thing, too. I think it's important for us to be as aggressive as we can in trying to replace buses that are more than 5 years old, because that could lead to some market problems. So in the event that we had some catastrophic happening as a result of a bus that we should not have in service.
Yeah, if it's not safe, we're not going to run it. We're going to be more likely to say, and frankly, I think down the road, not in the near term, but at some point, if this isn't resolved at the federal level, they're going to have to look at making some accommodations on ADA to do some, for lack of a better word, trip adjustments. But one of the, as Andy reported, one of the pieces of good news is it seems like our heavy-duty buses are on schedule. So frankly, one of the shorter-term impacts you'll see next spring is that, you know, those low ridership routes that typically would have the small bus on it, you're going to see big buses running on them. So when your neighbors call you and say, why, just explain that supply chain.
Supply chain.
All right. Well, with that, I think that closes our business.
And, you know, just to add to that, I think, Steve, you talking about all the conversations you're having with these national and statewide organizations is helpful too, so more synergy to hopefully push things forward is good. Mr. Searcy, anything else?
I believe I'm done.
Great, well, thank you very
In
much.
more ways than one.
I don't know about that. I think you got much more, so, but not on this agenda. Ms. Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The New Initiatives and Community Engagement Committee has one kind of update today and one action item. So I'm going to hand it over to Brian Williams, who's our Performance Oversight Manager, for a report on the next generation fare collection system. Thank you, Brian. Good to see you.
Right, so here we go. Let's talk quick ticket and where we are today, where we'll be going soon. So as of right now, all of Wigo local, regional bus and train service are 100% on quick ticket. It's helping us meet one of our goals in the overall project of simplicity for fare payment. So for our riders and our operators, riders and operators have a more simplistic way of paying for their transit. So instead of having to buy a 20 ride for the RTA bus, for example, and then a 31-day pass for the MTA local bus, they can load funds and it'll work on both.
That's great.
Currently, we have 18 ticket vending machines in place in our system, 2 of most being the ones at Hillsborough that are completely operational. We're working currently with our Wigo Ride partners to get them migrated over to the quick ticket system. Currently, about 75% of our Wigo Ride partners have moved from our old fare collection system to the quick ticket system. Upcoming, is access and Quick Ticket. So we're working on some back office testing with the Quick Ticket system to make sure that it works as intended. There's honestly over 400 different tests that we're going through just to make sure that it's ready before we bring in customers to help us test it to make sure we didn't miss anything. In this next coming fiscal year, we'll be working with Vanderbilt University to get their cards and their new mobile app that they have onto the Quick Ticket platform as well. And the next school year, MNPS, Metro Public Schools, will be utilizing the Quick Ticket system as well. So we've worked with their leadership in their badging department to make sure they know how to use our new system to accurately record who has what card, ensure the cards are working properly, and to make sure that we're recording pretty good ridership details. When it comes to ridership and Quick Ticket, if you remember, we launched this past February. I have that noted here in the slide. We're just over 20% of our riders were using Quick Ticket at that time. We've made a drastic move from last June, where we were almost at 14%, to this June, almost reaching 30% of our riders on Wigo services are using Quick Ticket. Over the next few months, as we continue to get our partners over, the Wigo ride partners over the Quick Ticket, that number will jump to about 50% is what my estimation is. That 30% number within there, about 11% of those rides are Wigo ride partners. I'm also working with some of other agencies that use the same technology to see what steps they took to kind of get that bigger number, the 70% number that you see, to get that even lower, to get people onto the Quick Ticket platform. Some saw big increases, some saw little, but we can learn from their opportunities to figure out the best way to get the benefits of Quick Ticket out to our passengers. So since we've launched in February, we've distributed about 10,000 reloadable Quick Ticket cards, and almost 1,000 virtual cards have been created on the Quick Ticket by Wigo app. People are using the system, they like the system. When it doesn't work, they're being vocal about it, and we're learning from it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So let's take a look at our retail network and distribution. Prior to Quick Ticket, you can get our magnetic tickets at Wigo locations such as Wigo Central. You can also visit Advanced Financial. They sold some of our adult passes, day passes, 31 days for our Wigo local service. Now, with Advanced Financial being one of our oldest partners with ticket distribution, we're up about 200% to 79 locations just in the Davidson County region. Now, instead of going to Advanced Financial to buy a day pass, I get a Quick Ticket and load whatever funds I need to be able to ride Wigo services. Tap it into equitable access to fare payment. So if you remember, our day pass for $4, now I can just load funds and work towards capping, so I don't pay more than $4 in a day. I don't pay more than the cost of a monthly pass in a calendar month. By the end of this year, we estimate that we'll be well over 200 locations just in Davidson County. So, like as I said, we're about 200% over where we were prior to Quick Ticket. Some locations that you can purchase reloadable cards right now, Walgreens, Advanced Financial, Speedway. People can load value at Family Dollar and CVS, and we're constantly looking for ways to bring more partners. So by the end of this year, we'll work with different social service agency leaders to help us find gaps in our retail network, to go there to approach retailers to ask them to partner with us. So we can get Quick Ticket where the passenger is and not require them to come where we are just to pay for the bus. Now I'm gonna pass over to Renuka so she can talk about some of our marketing efforts.
Before you walk away from that, I have
Yes,
a
ma'am.
question. So the retail spaces, can they charge riders any more than what the actual cost is?
So the retail network essentially works like your standard gift card. So there's a minimum and a max that a person can purchase.
Okay.
Okay, just like Visa card, for example.
But no fee for,
There's no fee for reloading. So if
Okay.
I walk in and say, hey, I want to add $10, the cost to the customer is $10.
and it was never a cost to purchase the card at any of our retail partners, right?
So at the retail level, there is the cost that we've suspended on our services of $3. That's just the cost of the card, but there's no extra fee outside of that.
Okay, thanks.
That was our fee, Gail. That wasn't imposed by the outlets.
Okay,
Correct. And honestly, it's a way to give the retailer something to come into the program as well.
fair enough, good, yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Brian. So marketing communications, obviously, Quick Ticket is one of our top priorities. And we continue to aggressively promote Quick Ticket through all of our internal and external communication channels. And while we do this, we're certainly mindful to be equitable and inclusive as we create transit advocates across the city. And ultimately, we want to increase Quick Ticket ridership. So just in brief, I want to share our external communication channels, which include social media, and then additional initiatives and partnerships. With social media, we've seen a real uptick in engagement and clicks and impressions. I'm just going to talk about the month of July, where we've seen engagement increase by 36%. And I want to thank my great team who have been working so hard as we see this uptick in social media, and as well as what I'm going to jump to next, our media, which is our media coverage. We've seen a extensive coverage in radio, print, online, and TV. And we've also been doing very strategic media buys. Again, we want to target a diverse market, and I was sharing with Steve that really in public transportation, everyone is our target market. So it's everybody everywhere that we are targeting. Initiatives, which I know by now you hopefully have heard about, are Wigo-cation, where you get half off local attractions with your Quick Ticket. We also have another campaign going on right now where you can park at the mall at Green Hills, and what we're coining it as shop and hop. So park at the mall, shop, and then hop on Route 7 or 17 at the Hillsborough Transit Center to get to downtown or 5th and Broadway and save money on parking. You can look at each other while you're riding the bus, and you don't have to pay a lot for an Uber. And hey, if you go to a rooftop bar, safe way to travel back. So there you go. And lastly, we are continuing to create unique partnerships across the city, which again, our ultimate goal is to have transit advocates throughout the community. Internally, we're engaging with staff. One of the ways we're doing that is working with our bus operators to promote Quick Ticket to riders. So as they come on board, encouraging them to ditch the paper and go digital with Quick Ticket. We have an internal newsletter where we do a lot of our internal communicating. And we're looking at creative incentives internally to get staff to promote Quick Ticket. And Brian, oh yes, and one more slide here is just a great photo of our board chair, Gail, in Wigo-cation as we kicked it off at the zoo. And that was, again, thanks to my team for helping create a great event.
Thanks, Renuka. And as always, I encourage people to give Quick Ticket a try. And if you think there's something we can change, let me know. I will do whatever I can to bring anybody over to Quick Ticket. That concludes our presentation. I'm here for any questions, recommendations.
Great report. Questions?
I will say, I was looking at Nextdoor, you know, that app that, Nextdoor, and somebody was complaining about parking downtown, and they were going to the Ryman, and someone else said, well, you should just ride the bus, because now that you can use your phone, it makes such a big difference. So apparently people on that Nextdoor app are saying nice things about it, so.
Any other questions or comments? The Wigo-cation, I'm just seeing it everywhere, the social media posts, and I think that was a really fun campaign idea, so.
I think the cool thing is actually Renuka's getting calls from other attractions saying, why can't we be in it?
Good, great.
So that's pretty awesome.
That's
Actually
great.
saw somebody today downtown taking 3 kids to the zoo because they was getting half off.
Success, yay. So I do have one question. So what is a percentage that we would claim was just off the chain victory? If we could get it to what percent would be like our dream? Is it 70? Is it 80? Is it?
It's a good question. So when I look at Portland, for example, while they started off, so if we say July 2018, 15% was their conversion at that point, before they moved their version of Wigo Ride Partners over. Once they did that 100%, they jumped to just over 85%.
Right.
But the key is, at this point in the game, going to where the customers are, so getting on the bus. For RTA, for example, the bus driver said, hey, we don't like taking cash that much. What can we do? They're actually taking cards, and if they see somebody paying here's a quick ticket. Put money on this next time, and then you don't have to worry about paying about
That's a
cash.
great idea.
I think a couple of things, Brian highlighted some of the upcoming activities, getting Vanderbilt converted over, getting schools converted over, more of the Wigo Ride Partners. So we have, we're looking at both a retail and a wholesale market, for lack of a better word. Retail being that one person getting a card and putting $5 on it or whatever, and the institutionals being that wholesale market. So as we sort of check those boxes, first of all, you'll see large jumps in participation when somebody like Vanderbilt or MNPS comes on board. But we'll get to a point, the ones that have been really successful, and my gut reaction was going to be in the 80% range. I've always contended we're always going to accept cash on the bus. And I would also contend that the last dollar bill that is ever spent in U.S. currency will be spent on a public transit vehicle. So I'm sure that that'll be a permanent part of our setting. But we will likely get to a point where penetration's high enough, where we know the retail outlet network is strong enough, that people understand the system, where we will likely, and this is where other systems have gone, for all intents and purposes, go to a system of incentives and penalties. That we want to make it really, really easy and really, really attractive for you to use Quick Ticket. Not so much cash. If you want to use cash, you can use it, but we really have to move away from the magnetics. They're expensive, they're unreliable. Eventually, if we were to stay with magnetics, we'd have to replace that system at great cost. So as we get closer to that point, it'll be, you can ride the bus, but you're going to drop $2. You can pay cash, but you're going to drop $2 in the box every time you get on. No free transfers, no day passes, unless you're on Quick Ticket.
All right, keep selling, keep going. You're doing a great job.
I've got a question. That's
Mary?
okay. So I could, again, some of it's sort of just to kind of confirm to make sure when I'm telling somebody else what they can do. So someone can go in, a parent, and for example, and buy a card at the Walgreens, let's say, and give it to their child. We could give it out to somebody who's unhoused, perhaps, or is that's correct, right?
Correct. And one of the biggest partners that's going to help us jump in this conversion is the Metro Homelessness Commission, so the Connector Card program. They'll be getting everyone over to Quick Ticket over the next couple of months as well. We've had a couple of partners reach out to us as well, and we've put Quick Tickets in their hands.
Wonderful. The other question,
If I could just add to that, Mary, though, it's an account-based system, so in theory, if you get a card and set up an account, and say a parent does it for their kid, if they give you access to that account, you can load value on for them. So, you'd be able to, use your credit or debit card to put value on Brian's card, that he's then able to use. And that would be true whether it was friends, social service agencies, what have you. And that's kind of the beauty of the account-based system. It's if you've ever, there are no tolls in Tennessee. I come from a part of the country where Easy Pass is everywhere.
right?
That it's just, it just comes out of your account.
So that was and that was the next part of my question. So you would have to give someone access to the account, though, to be able to load it on computer, for example,
So
for your phone account.
So essentially, every card or virtual card has a number, a unique number to it. All you would need is that number. So my Quick Ticket number, I can give it to you right now. You can go online, add funds to it. You can call customer care, add funds to it. You can make an online account and link it as well.
Walter's gonna send you some money, Mary.
I'll take care of you, Walter. I'll take care. I will take care of Walter. No, that is fantastic. That's really wonderful because, we've all been in those circumstances. There might be a kid whose family, can't afford to get their child all the time, for after school. I'm trying to, think of all the wonderful times that, you know, you would be able to perhaps help others out and by knowing how to do it.
Yes.
So I thank you for that information, and, you know, I think it would be good to be able to spread that as well, you know? Others can share in on that, so we can help the community. Thank you.
And highlight again, and Brian touched on it, we've talked about it in prior meetings, but with the fare capping policy that you all implemented, you know, historically, the complaint about things like monthly passes where the people who need them the most can afford them the least. Now, you can buy a monthly pass $5 at a time if you want. You just load that up, you load money onto your account as you have it, and you're charged for the use. So once you hit $4 in a day, it stops charging you. Once you hit the threshold for a month, it stops charging you, and that's why you see in a lot of the campaigns that Renuka has out, it's, you know, earn free rides. That's literally what you can do.
Well, I would like to say Brian was kind enough to inform me that I already had it, but I just had not figured out in the beginning, and I do know how to use it now, and it was easy once I just realized that I actually already had it, and I thank you. I think the program's wonderful, and it was very, very easy to use as long as I keep my phone charged. Thank you.
Okay, tell the customers to keep their phones charged. So, any last comments? Thank you for that really great report. Appreciate it, both of you. Okay, next up, we have, hang on, let's see what we got. Hannah Schaefer is going to talk with us about Transit Origin Destination Onboard Survey Award. Did I get that right? Hannah, are you here?
Yes, that's
Yes,
correct.
hi Hannah.
Yeah,
Take it away.
all right, perfect. Well, good afternoon. As you mentioned, today I'm here to present the consultant selection for our Origin Destination Survey. As you may or may not know, every 5 years, MTA relies on the professional services for a consultant to collect information from a sample of our riders, and that's otherwise not available through other sources of data that we collect. So for instance, at the bottom of the slide is just a screen capture of our ridership statistics, route by route ridership statistics, sorry about that, that we collect through farebox data so that we can monitor when it's time to improve span or frequency on routes. And then in the top right corner, there's a map that we can create visuals for identifying which stops are the most heavily used so we can prioritize capital improvements. But the fact of the matter is there's a lot of other information about our riders that goes into how we plan our service. And the only way to capture that information is through this onboard survey. And so, as you can imagine, it does require a level of effort that is just not within the agency's realm. So to survey riders on every MTA and RTA route, it does require a team of professionals that have experience in doing this. And we get information, related to characteristics of their trip. So where did they begin their trip? How did they get to the bus stop? Where is their ultimate destination and how do they intend to do that to get there? And also other things like how do they pay for their fares? If the bus wasn't available, how else would they have how would they have completed their trip? We also look at socioeconomic information for race, income, and primary language. And, again, this stuff isn't available to us through other traditional sources of data. So this is our opportunity to get that information. This information, it helps identify needs of the community to more effectively serve those that depend on our service. The outputs are used in conjunction with census data as well as outputs from the travel demand model created by the GNRC that helps identify regional ridership trends. And it also helps inform the direction to the upcoming in-motion strategy update. So that goes into our strategic planning for the next 5 to 20 years. We also collect the information to incorporate into our triennial update of our Title VI program. It allows staff to identify changes to low income and minority distribution in our service area, and any prevalent languages spoken to identify translation services that are needed for our community. So all this to say, the Origin Destination Survey is considered one of the most important planning tools for transit agencies because it helps us define the future of our service in relation to the unique needs for those who need it. So since this isn't our first time doing this. We used the 2017 survey as a base for developing the scope for this year's project. We wanted to include some improvements to how it's been collected in the past to give us better insights and analysis capabilities. So for instance, 5 years may not seem like a long time, but as we have probably realized, a lot changes in 5 years. So the option for intermediate surveys was really important for us this time around. So we included that in the scope as well. In the past, we've also only collected a 10% sample, but we found that we're very limited on what we can pull from that information. So we've requested for a larger sample size of 25%. And then finally, compatibility with, for the final database outputs. So putting them into a form that we can use for visualizations and queries through software that we already have. So after revising the scope, or publishing the scope, we published a request for proposals, and somebody that was more capable of a more refined approach and in tune to more current challenges such as staffing shortages, health and safety concerns with doing in-person sampling, and data validity with a smaller sample size. Our ridership has gone down, so you know, an agency that's capable of kind of focusing our efforts to get what we need to get a significant sample. So this is a general timeline of the project. In May, we released the RFP and held a pre-proposal meeting to discuss the importance of all the things that we mentioned today. And out of the 5 agencies that attended, 2 submitted proposals on the due date of June 22nd. From there, an evaluation committee of 5 members from both the planning team, the scheduling department, and the service quality department, we unanimously selected ETC Institute. And we did this based on the review of the proposals and interviews with each candidate. And the key factors in landing on ETC is their breadth of experience in this origin destination data collection. They have a lot of experience doing this around the country for the last 30 years or so. They also had really great responses to the challenges brought on by the pandemic, and they've also have a really great working knowledge of Title VI requirements in relation to this effort and FTA requirements. So other details about the project, sorry, to go into the timeline, the August through September will be the planning stages, and then October through November will be the actual collection. So those are that's our highest ridership period. So we targeted that timeline for that, with the data analysis period for December through January, and the final report to be completed in February through March. So other project details, ETC Institute submitted a best and final offer of $472,451 to be completed within the 9-month time frame. And the funding will be from 5307 Urbanized Area Formula Funds, and DBE participation will be 8%, which will consist for the staffing labor for the actual surveyors doing the surveys on the buses. So with that, staff requests that the Board of Directors provide the Chief Executive Officer the authority to enter a professional services contract with ETC Institute for work to begin on August 1st. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer anything or elaborate on more as needed, so.
Having a little asthma thing going, it's all fine.
Yeah.
Questions?
I do have one question. How will the data be collected? Will they be riding the buses, or exactly how will you go about the surveys?
Yeah, so it does involve the team actually being on the buses and surveying people face to face. If they don't have time to complete a survey, they do have the option to complete it through, you know, a paper survey that they can mail in, or they can log into a website to fill out the information there, which is then collected. And there's unique codes that each person gets, so that way we have a way of knowing who is submitting each survey when they're not face to face.
Interesting. Other questions,
I'm pretty
Mary?
sure I was surveyed in 2017, so I have a question. I'm very interested, especially, you know, with some of the bus activity that we're going to have towards South Nashville, you know, in the future. Will any of the interviews be in other languages?
Yes, so they will have, there's a prioritization to have bilingual staff available, but they also have a mechanism available to identify other languages outside of Spanish because that's our most prevalent language, but we know that there's other languages spoken in our service area.
Lots of other languages
Yes.
spoken, especially in,
Yes.
Nashville and South Nashville.
So they have a digital platform where they'll actually have each language, the top 20 or 30 languages, and they can identify what language is theirs that they speak, and then have the survey instrument translate everything into their language.
So it's like an iPad kind of thing where you hand them a device and put it in the right language? Is that how it works?
Yeah, to my understanding, that's how it would work. So all of these details, they get worked out during the survey instrument planning stages. So we'll have more information as far as how that's exactly done. But again, this team,
Back to us. You're gonna bring an actual survey back to us.
we can certainly look into that, yeah. I'm not sure if that's, if we've done that in the past, but we can
Yeah, we
certainly
can send it.
do that.
I don't think you'll probably see like a formal report until we actually get data out of it, but
Right.
Right.
Updates would be good.
But to also be aware that not everyone has the same literacy level in the foreign, this is my space that I've worked in for a long time. And so as you are creating them, that to be aware that there are many people who speak that language, but it's not translation, it can be interpretation, which can be done, digitally as well sometimes. But I think there's possibility here, and it's very exciting for some new ridership, so I thank you for doing this. I think it's really important.
And as you said, a lot happens in 5 years, for sure. Other comments, questions?
Since Mary does have a lot of expertise with this, Hannah, maybe you could reach out to Mary, and I'm certain Mary will respond back in kind. And as you're going through this process, maybe you all can work a little bit together to sort of make certain all these needs are being met and be more intentional about it, so.
That'd be great, yeah, definitely.
Great.
Anything else? Walter, Jessica, all good?
Sounds exciting. We used to do surveys all the time.
Yeah.
We used to have them in the monthly pack. I love sharing old stories.
So if there's no other questions or comments, then the committee will recommend to the board that we provide Steve the authority to enter a professional services contract with ETC Institute for the Transit Origin Destination Survey in the amount of $472,451.97, 9-month term with the surveys in October and November. And the funding is in place coming through the FTA Section 5307 funds. So that is our recommendation, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you very much. With that being a recommendation of the committee for approval of the Transit Origin Destination Onboard Survey Award, not requiring a second, is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. We have
Okay.
surveys coming.
There we
Good
go.
job.
So that concludes our New Initiatives Community Engagement Committee report.
Well, thank you, Ms. Miller.
Of course,
Well done.
anytime.
Exciting things. Mr. Bland.
thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, members. Just a few things that I'll report on. First of all, yesterday, Gail, Janet, Margaret, and I had the opportunity to meet virtually with Doug Eady, our Governance Council, to work through a draft of the outline of the report for the May 19th workshop. Doug's going to incorporate we had a lot of really good discussion. Doug's going to incorporate a lot of the edits that were done there. We're going to have one last meeting of that group, probably in the next few weeks. And then likely, I'm going to guess in September, we'll probably carve out some time at the meeting to sort of workshop it a little bit. So appreciate everybody's involvement. And that was certainly a great session. Next, at their meeting on July 19th, we want to express our appreciation to the Metro Council. They unanimously approved both of our actions to formally rename Wigo Central after Elizabeth Duff and to name the North Nashville Transit Center after Rep. Patton. I particularly want to thank Vice Mayor Schulman, who made a big deal out of the entire event at the meeting. He invited both families to join him at the podium to gavel the meeting in. Councilmember Suara gave a very compelling presentation when the issue was introduced. And essentially all the members asked to be included. As we originally had, I think, 6 or 7 co-sponsors. Ultimately, every council member wanted to be a co-sponsor, and it passed unanimously. So super event. Thanks to Eric Byer for helping shepherd that through the council process. Probably one of the easier Other than maybe Gail's reappointment to the board, probably one of the easier things we ever do with council, but we'll certainly take that. Also, let you know, we have issued a task order to our on-call architects, Smith G, to help us in generating ideas, thoughts, designs for what we do at Central to commemorate Elizabeth. Some point in that process, we will engage the family to participate in that process, and in all likelihood, we'll come to this body to float ideas, get suggestions, what have you. And then relative to the North Nashville Transit Center project, a lot of activity this month as that begins to ramp up. First of all, internally, it didn't meet the threshold where it had to come to the board, but internally, we've awarded a contract to the Don Harden Group to coordinate the curation of the cultural programming at that site. So that includes the art, the historical accuracy of what we're wanting to do to commemorate the Freedom Riders. And I think one of the things that our committee was impressed with, they actually have construction expertise. So it isn't just, here's the art, you figure out how to stick it on the building, that they actually have folks who are expert in incorporating it into actual construction. So that should be really cool. And obviously, as we go through that design and those shop drawings, how we honor Mr. Patton in that process you'll see more definition of that. We also received bids, construction bids for the project. We're sorting through those. I won't spoil all the surprise. I will tell you that, and I don't claim, neither Trey nor I nor Denise claim any, psychic knowledge, but they came in way higher than budget, way higher than we originally planned, as everybody is experiencing. So right now, we're in the process of doing all the due diligence on the apparent low bidder, thanks to Denise Richardson, our brand new Director of Procurement and Business Diversity. Is that the title, Denise? Mm-hmm. Okay. Who's done a tremendous amount of work on that process. And in the near term, we'll be working with Billy Higgins to reshuffle some money around so that we can move that project forward in a timely manner. So, but we definitely expect to be coming back to you in the August meeting with award recommendations on that project. We continue to be involved heavily with NDOT, Mayor's Office, Metro Planning on the East Bank stuff, design stuff, particularly as related to the mobility parts of that. My understanding is that Metro Planning is expecting to release their vision document in August at some point. So that will likely ramp up over the next few months. We mentioned it earlier. Really thankful to be joined by Mayor Cooper, Councilmember Toombs, Judge Rachel Bell at an event commemorating the completion of the 250th shelter in our system. We've more than doubled the number of shelters we have over the last 6 years or so. This particular site was at 600 Revels Drive in Bordeaux, which is in front of the Faith United Missionary Baptist Church. In that community, it was noteworthy for a couple of sections. I mean, Trey is really strategic. When I said, hey, we ought to do something for the 250th, we kind of hit all of the bells and whistles with, this was actually one of the sites identified by the North Nashville community as part of Metro Nashville's participatory budgeting process. So we were able to get funding in addition to our capital spending plan allocation from Metro through that process, which was community generated. And this was one of those sites. In addition to those other speakers, the senior pastor from the church came out and gave some really inspiring words about really what that service means to a number of the folks who attend that church. So very cool. But probably the best remarks of the day were made by our Purple Heart recipient, Ms. Jessica Dauphin, who came to represent the board. And other than the fact that I think a bunch of us were ready to stuff her in the back of a car, because, being out in 100-degree heat was not necessarily the best idea, Jessica, for future reference. But her words were truly inspiring in terms of the importance of public transportation for mobility, community engagement, being involved in our communities. So especially to everybody who participated, to Renuka and your crew for putting together the event, to Trey and Lydia and Kia and Denise and everybody involved in getting it constructed. We also had the contractors show up. There were local North Nashville minority businesses who did the work. So it was really great to see them there. As I said in my very brief, hopefully very brief, staff might disagree with that, remarks, apart from the actual value of the project, it was really cool to see that being an ability to develop neighborhood and small business. We had that opportunity. So while I'm tooting Trey's horn, he has way more patience than I do. He is slogging through the process to actually get us shelters built at the fairgrounds. So in some noteworthy movement, I know he's working with Margaret. We will likely bring to you next month an easement agreement with the Fair Board that they'll also be acting on for our outbound station site. And we did run into some, in the outbound. On the inbound, we did continue to run into some issues with Metro Water. And through the creativity of the design team, we're looking to try to, basically we'll downsize the size of that project so we can keep it entirely within NDOT right-of-way. And NDOT, at least I know Diana is chomping at the bit to just get the darn thing built. You know, at least on an interim basis, for the short term, it'll work fine. And then long term, as they build out the full infrastructure package for the fairgrounds, we'll actually have a pretty first-class operation there, so appreciate that. Want to acknowledge the efforts of Nick Oldham, who's continued to convene meetings of our Operator Assault Task Force. Unfortunately, over the last few years, we've seen an uptick, as frankly has everybody around the country, in assaults on transit employees, which is beyond concerning. Very committed, very practical group. A couple of the members have actually been victims of assault in the past, coming up with some very practical suggestions, recommendations, both short-term and long-term, some of which we've already enacted.
Steve, how many assaults will we have in a year?
You know, looking at how you define it, because everything goes from verbal assault to, you know, a physical assault could include like spitting on folks, so that happens way too often. You know, to weapons threats that don't actually end up in an assault. But if you add them all together, we're probably now at 3 or 4 a month, I would have to say.
It's not quite that high, but there are some months that are worse than others. But I hate to say it, but at least once or twice a month, we're seeing something. And it comes down to there's verbal assaults and.
If you pull a gun on somebody, that is an assault.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Gun, knife, or any threatening object. Spitting is considered a physical assault. Weapons threat is considered physical assault. Obviously, physically striking someone is a physical assault, but, you know, a threatening, if I don't have a weapon and I'm going to do this, Walter, that's a verbal assault. Picking up, I got to participate this past month in the annual strategic planning workshop of our Tennessee Public Transportation Association Board of Directors. I'm currently vice president of that board. Janet, as you know, that's the coolest job on any board, so, you know. Yeah, past chair, that's pretty good too.
I've been trying for that.
Some of the major topics we cover in that session is, this is the time of year we do our planning for any legislative initiatives in the upcoming legislative session. We talked extensively about operator assault trends and mitigation strategies, staffing shortages, and of course the small bus chassis issue that Andy alluded to. That it's interesting, around the state, operator assaults is kind of a all over the place issue. A lot of the small social service agencies, what are you talking about? You know, we've never had one in the 50-year history of the agency. In some of the larger urbans, it's almost like a routine. You know, Memphis, it's certainly kind of they have a number and it's sort of been steady for years. But staffing shortages and the transit and the small bus chassis issues are universal. In fact, our meeting was in Pigeon Forge. If you've ever been there, they have their main public transit is their little trolley that runs up and down the strip there. And they would be their director reported, they would be at their all-time record ridership, except they don't have enough drivers to put service out as frequently as they need it. So it definitely is an issue all over the place. And then lastly, I would conclude, Madam Chair, with I always try to keep you current on the RTA side of the business. We received 7 proposals on our future visioning study for the Wigo Star. You know, with changing commute patterns and potentials for TOD and interest in Wilson County and potentially some reverse commute areas, we're going to take kind of a a ground zero look at what do we do with the star in the future to enhance its usefulness to the region, and how we can basically leverage that investment into greater return. We've also received an unsolicited proposal for joint development of the Donaldson Station property, which is a good news item. So we're going to be proceeding through the unsolicited proposal policy that the RTA board and this board adopted several months ago. So stay tuned, hopefully, for more exciting news on that. And then lastly, for those of you who are looking forward to the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix on August 7th, the Wigo store will be operating to get people to and from the event. It may not be as fast as the race cars, but it'll be a whole lot easier than driving, and it's a whole lot less likely to crash than they are. So certainly encourage folks to go online and get tickets for that, both going to and from that event. We had really good, last year was the first year for the race. We did the star, and we had very good for a first year. We had very good turnout, so we're anxious to get even better ridership this year. So, Madam Chair, unless there's any questions, that concludes my report.
Oh, thank you, Steve. That was a great report, and I'm glad you mentioned a lot of different things. Anybody have any questions for Steve first? So I can just say ditto to a lot of it. So it's made my report much quicker and much easier. So ditto to the fact that we are moving closer to having a really good working document to enhance our board work. So we're excited about that. And just over the top excited about the support we have from Metro Council for the naming of both facilities, and how exciting to sort of honor these heroes in our community. So I'm super excited about that. And so speaking of North Nashville, Rita, you did such an incredible job with getting us to this point with the whole North Nashville Transit Center project. So, and being able to name it, know that we got contracts coming in this month and next month, and that we're definitely inviting you back for ribbon cutting.
Thank you.
It's Rita's sort of last meeting, and I feel sort of some kind of way about it. But what I mostly feel is that I feel very proud that I've had the opportunity, and very happy that I've had the opportunity to work with you in this capacity. And I think probably everybody in this room feels this way. So you did, everybody's gonna did on that, but I just wanna share, Steve was kind enough to send me some of your really landmark things, right? So, and I'm gonna read them. I know he's surprised that I'm gonna read them, but I'm gonna read them because I don't want to.
I know you're not going to use these because that's not your style.
But no, but they're so they're so big because I have to read them because I think that we have to continue building on the good work that you've done.
Can I just say, Madam Chair, when I saw my church member come into the podium, I thought, wait, is she a surprise guest or something?
I didn't realize she was a church member of yours.
Yes. And I don't know if it's a good sign or not that in the 6 years I've been here, she has not brought any complaints to me. So I don't know. Today, I guess she thought, why not?
Girl, what they say, look what happens someday. So, they come in, those blessings come when they come. So it's all good. So Rita, you led the creation and successful evolution of our first business diversity plan. And you got people picking up that, furthering that along. You developed our first in-house leadership development curriculum for mid-managers and supervisors. I remember we talked about that, and it's going well, and it's successful, and it'll keep going. You helped in the creation and advancement of our maintenance apprenticeship program. It's just building, bringing everybody along with you. It's just wonderful. She was on the team that successfully negotiated 2 collective bargaining agreements with the union. You and Ed did that one together, and that's wonderful. And then you led the creation of the chief safety officer position, and with Nick, developed the safety management systems plan. And you quietly handled dozens, if not hundreds, of contract, legal, and Freedom of Information Act issues. And I know Margaret will talk about how much fun she had working with you and how the two of you together were quite the pair, right? And I would say what you always brought to the table, Rita, was you brought kindness, you brought an ability to teach others and to mentor others, and to just come in and do the hard work without complaint. You always did it with a little bit of that little Rita laughter. You know how Rita, see, this is right there, right? That little bit of laughter. But you always did it with kindness. And I always felt that everything was good when I sat at this table and I could see you out there. And I know that you have been a huge support for Steve and a good working partner and a good colleague to so many in this room. And so you did this here for Metro, but you also did HR for Metro. You have been certainly a wonderful person for Nashville. And you continue to be that, and you will continue to be that. So here at the board, we wish you so much going into practicing law every day. All the time, 24/7, and know that you will be missed. And we are all grateful to have had you in this space for this long to do these many things and so many things that we haven't even talked about. It's been our honor to have you here.
Thank you, thank you.
Steve and I have something for you. Come on, you guys are gonna make me cry. That's okay, we like to do that. Tears are okay.
So is orange the official color of the firm? Is this a?
No, but it's a good start.
Oh, purple for your last
Well, it's a tidbit off of that other orange, so that's why, you know, that's why I didn't just nixnay this whole thing, right? No. You just stand between me and Steve and then help us. You know, we gotta do pictures, you know?
Rita, take off. Okay.
Take your mask off for a second.
I'm like,
Only if you're comfortable.
I'm 50 shades of red right now.
Only if you're comfortable. I don't have a lawyer with immediate access.
Oh, my God.
And that concludes my report, and I will give this over to Margaret.
Before, if I might, before we leave Rita, I do want to say on behalf of the staff, I'm not going to be able to match Gail's words, but I will tell the story that when she came in that day and took about 25 minutes to sort of warm me up for the idea that she would be leaving, I said, well, is there anything we can do to get you to stay? And she said, well, she recalled the words of her father that always said, chase your dreams. And my dream is to argue a case in front of the Supreme Court. And I said, well, there is no way in hell I want to see that happen here. So good luck to you.
And I'm sorry, before, any of board members have anything to add? I'm sorry. I was moving to Margaret before I asked you all. I apologize.
Hurry up and get there.
Yeah, you get there and we'll all come and watch. How
We
about
will.
that, okay?
Opportunity. I remember the first time Steve and I met, and I said the things that drive me are just, you know, enjoying life, but also just doing something. I love my city, and doing something no matter how hidden away, no one may ever know it, but just feeling like I'm doing something for my community in the positive. And I have to say, this job did not disappoint. I love it. And you know, it's one of those things where you say, I really have had a fantastic time here, and but for that crazy dream of mine, I would have loved to have been here for a longer time, but I also know Nashville is truly a small, big city, and so I trust we are all going to work together some more.
All right. Before I pass this out, you know, there's this theme, a lot can happen in the last 5 years, Rita, and the past 6 years, I have seen what you have done for this agency in so many ways, and I was so glad that Gail wrote what Steve said, but she was right when she said there were a lot of other things that we will all not know. And the little bit that I know, what you've done to contribute to this agency, I agree. You have contributed to your community in ways that I applaud, and I am so grateful. And talk about missing someone, I am really going to miss you. So thank you for the professional relationship we've had.
She's a competitor now, right, Marty?
No, we already have figured out how we're working together, so we're not going to be apart. So I am going to pass out to all of you all some additional information that's in your packet that we did last year that I think makes it easier to talk about ethics. So let me pass it out to you all.
Sticky again. There you go. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you.
So this outline is only 5 pages, not to make y'all think, oh my gosh. And on the back is Exhibit A, which is our conflict of interest policy that was in your packet. And then B is just a 1-pager of the FTA procurement policy. So we have some goals in doing this yearly annual review about ethics, which we can thank board member Marionette, who made a time each summer that we would review ethics, which I thought was a really good idea. It's helpful to me too, to do it, and to also elect officers. So this is an annual thing that we do in the summer. And the goals are so that you all know benefits related to your role on the board, or use that information that has not potential financial gain. If you are biased or have conflict, not accuse yourself about all of these things, and about how you articulate the specific reasons why you might have a conflict. We're going to learn the procedure about filing a, thank you, appreciate that, an ethics complaint. We're going to talk about the Open Meetings Act, and a little bit about your emails and what to do there. And we're going to understand best practices for making informed decisions. So just as a brief recap, the state's legislature passed a law in 2007 that required every municipality, and MTA was part of that definition, the kind of entity we are, to pass a code of ethics. And so there was a model code of ethics that they gave, so the MTA board adopted that model, except for just making it, apply to MTA. So that is Exhibit A that you have. So if you turn to page 2, I think this is like just obvious, but I think it's important because the FTA procurement policy in Exhibit B and Exhibit A, the conflict of interest policy, says that you cannot accept benefits that would affect your decision or any kind of compensation. So you cannot do anything at National MTA for your personal gain either. So you can't have any benefits from the organization yourself, and not benefits from entities that are affiliated with MTA or have contracts with MTA. Now, if you find when a matter comes before you that you are biased or have a conflict, it's important for you to think about whether or not you can make an objective decision despite the conflict. But you have to, before there's a vote on the matter, say that you do have a conflict. And you have to say why. And then at that point, you determine whether or not you are going to recuse yourself from the vote. So you don't necessarily have to recuse yourself, except there is one exception for that, and that's how the FTA policy blends with this other policy. In the FTA procurement policy, It says, if you are employed or you have an immediate family member who is employed in regarding to the contract with FTA assistance that is brought before you, you cannot vote on that. But you still have to disclose that so that everybody here knows what that is about. It's also important to know that what I am talking about today applies to staff too. So it's not just the board members, but it also applies to all staff and personnel. So these are some factors here on page 2 that you just to consider whether or not you, other than the FTA assistance with the term of the contract, and your family member, you would be employed by that. Here's what you consider when you determine whether or not you have to recuse yourself or not. And I think you can just look at that, but really it has to do with your prejudice and again, whether or not you are going to be objective in your vote or whether it affects your bias. Now, a lot of times people, because they have to disclose a specific reason, thinks, I'm just going to recuse myself because I don't want anybody to worry about that. But sometimes we might not have a quorum, and sometimes it might be real important. So you might find yourself in a situation where you really do need to think about whether or not you can be objective or not, because you want to go ahead and make sure you do the board's business. But in disclosing that, you will, I think you would have the proper cover you need to go ahead and vote if you feel like you can be objective. So going on to page 3, we do have a procedure. So every municipality or governmental agency like ours has to have an ethics procedure. Once again, this procedure is what's in the model statute that the state says is appropriate or can be used by an agency. So I am the designated ethics officer of MTA. So if anybody has a question or wants to know anything about whether they're doing something ethically or not, you're free to call me. If there is an ethics complaint, there's a procedure here for how that is investigated. And we follow this procedure, and if it's decided that an ethics complaint needs to be investigated, either I can investigate it or the board could suggest somebody else designates it, because it could be that I am too close or I myself think I have a conflict. So obviously, even though I'm the ethics officer, someone else could also be doing the investigation instead of me. So just know more than anything that there is a process. So if there's an ethics complaint, we have a process where we can make sure it's investigated and taken care of. There also are sanctions that can be done. So it could be a staff person or whatever, there are sanctions. And the FTA requires us, when you look at Exhibit B, to have a process where there could be discipline if there was an ethics problem. So, and that's when you look at Exhibit B, you see violations, the last paragraph there, to the extent permitted by law or whatever, such standards of conduct will provide for penalties and sanctions, and we have that here with our Code of Conduct in Exhibit A. So moving on to the Open Meetings Act, very important to know, I think one of the most important provisions is that the Open Meetings Act prohibits deliberation outside board meetings between two of you or among any of you. And the Public Records Act makes almost all your emails open to the public that have to do with board business if you are talking with each other or you're talking with Steve or a staff member. So always remember that. Remember the staff member who is contacting you, their email is on nashville.gov, so that is a public record. Your response will be a public record too. Never do business between each other in emails because that way, you don't have to deal, that would be a public record if you are discussing MTA business. And then, then you get into whether or not you're deliberating toward a decision. You're probably not making a decision, but the question is, are you deliberating toward a decision? So it's not just making a decision that needs to be transparent to all that are here today, but your deliberation toward a decision is required to be also in the open. Okay. So you see the definition, a meeting is when two or more members of a governing body with the authority to make decisions for or recommendations to a public body meet and make a decision or deliberate toward a decision. So those are the key words. And then there's a question about a meeting too. You're required, if you're having a meeting, to give adequate notice to the public and to give adequate notice of what will be heard at the meeting. This body does a tremendous job of that. There's adequate notice Friday before a Thursday meeting. That is plenty of time. The staff does an incredible job with the recommendations and what we're going to be looking at. I know the staff sometimes go, oh my gosh, this is the longest action item or whatever. But what you are doing is providing to the public incredible notice, in my opinion. You don't see it with some bodies, but really letting people know what this agency is doing and the rationale for that. I feel that this agency does a great job in being completely open and not being worried about the public knowing, the good and the bad or whatever. And I applaud the agency for doing that. But that is one reason you're getting such good reports, I think, from the staff. So really, this next part on page 5, and we're just wrapping it up, understanding best practices for making informed decisions. You are getting this information. I mean, you're essentially getting the information from staff to make good decisions. And obviously, you as a board ask a lot of questions too. And so you want, they give you enough information so that you can ask questions. And so I think, we don't see any problems here with you all making informed decisions because of really how well the staff gives the information. You don't have to fight to get the information you need to make the decision. But you should, again, make sure you understand the context of the department, the staffing, how they fit in the agency, and then do what you do, and that is review your materials and all the information given to you, so by the time you get to the board meeting, you can do your job. So, any questions that any of you might have, as I know went through this pretty quickly, but we do it every year, so it's more of a reminder than a training course about your duties and responsibilities and ethical challenges and ways to handle it. Yes, Jessica, do you have a
I just wanted
question?
to say thank you for the reminder. I felt like it's good to walk through it and hear it explained, and have the materials to take home. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to do it, yes.
I appreciate it also. There was legislation that was passed this year, but I don't do law for this board. So does it in any way affect, that the new law has something about you have to retain even recordings for 3 years, but is that only for
We
state?
have a records retention policy already, and I think it is 3 years. That's what we put in our contracts. But I wouldn't worry if you're worried about emails, because sometimes there's an automatic deletion feature on emails. So as far as emails go, what you do already, that's okay.
No, and I was just wondering if the new law in any way affected us as local government, but.
I don't know what you're referring to, but I will take a look and let you know.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And again, it's brand new, so I haven't taken a look at it. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, are we ready for the next action item?
Yes, we are. Thank you very much for the ethics presentation. It is important for us to be reminded, huh? Yeah, I think it is. I think there's a reason for that.
What's going on? Ready?
We're ready. I am ready.
Well, I am also the secretary of the board. And this is the yearly responsibility I also have in looking at the board and thanking you for your service, and particularly Gail and Janet for serving as chair and vice chair for the past year. You both, I just think everybody on this board is terrific. Our May 19th workshop was even better, but we've had a good year as a board, and thank you particularly for our officers. I understand our officers would serve, I don't know how much arm twisting there was, another term, and so I'm going to open up the floor for any nominations of anybody for president and chair and vice chair, if that's the way you want to do it, or simply for chair. So whatever motion's out there, please make it.
Well, I would like to nominate Gail Carr-Williams as chair, and just go ahead and do a double nomination of Janet Miller as vice chair.
Thank you, Mary. Is there a second?
Second.
So the members of the board who are not going to serve as officers are all in agreement to motion and a second to Gail Carr-Williams serving as chair for another term for 1 year, and Janet Miller as vice chair for another term for 1 year. And I'm going to say we had 2 seconds for the minutes, Monica, Jessica, and Walter. So there cannot be any other nominations unless we have it from the chair and vice chair. Do we have any other nominations? No. All right, so we will now vote. All in favor of the motion for Gail Carr-Williams to be chair another year and Janet Miller to be vice chair for another year, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I hear no opposition. Congratulations and thank you.
Madam Chair, may I
Yes.
have a moment? So thank you. We wanted to close out today with a special presentation, and it is for our newly elected chair, Miss Gail Carr-Williams. And Gail has been serving this agency for 20 years. And we really wanted to pause as we were going through our annual ritual to say thank you to you. And from my standpoint, Gail is in many ways the heart and soul of this board. Her care and her soulfulness and her dedication to me is just awe-inspiring. And 20 years is a long time. She's probably been through 4 or 5 mayors, bunch of CEOs, bunch of staff changes, couple of referendums, some labor contract negotiations. And her institutional knowledge and history is just priceless to this board. One of the things I also love so much about you, Gail, is you are such an advocate for this team and this staff. I know that they have your heart, and I've always admired that so much. And I think you remind all of us every day to always keep in mind who we serve and who our customers are. And that is something that many boards can get caught up in the business and forget who they are there to serve. And you are here as our role model for that. And I will say, I like to think that I have made a few contributions to this board since I have served, but I'm going to claim right now that my biggest contribution was a few months ago. Gail was musing over whether she should be reappointed to this board. She thought maybe that it might be time for her to go and do other things. And we were all kind of nice about it for a bit. And I was sitting home working in my home office one day, and it was right after the Green Hills Transit Center dedication. And it is like a lightning bolt came down from heaven and hit me in my home office. And it said, "It is not time for Gail to go. She has so much more to contribute, and I'm not done with her, I think. And then I called Steve and says, can I call Gail and harass her and see if I can bring her over to staying? And she was out on a walk, and she said she was listening to some Aretha and that she'd call me back. But we are all so thrilled that Gail has decided to stay on with us, and just wanted to honor you for your 20 years of service. So we have for you a little token that Steve will present to you. That's a bag that we all love. And we also have an award for you, Gail, that reads, celebrating 20 years, awarded to Gail Carr Williams in honor and appreciation of your many years of leadership, dedication, and commitment as a board member and board chair of the Nashville Metropolitan Transit Board Authority, board member 2002 to present, board chair 2000 to 2010, 2016 to president, and awarded July 28, 2022. So, and we got yours lights up. So with that, thank you, Gail. Thank you for being here. I love making my friends cry happy tears. It's one of my favorite things. So, Gail, we love you and are so appreciative.
I'm speechless. I mean, to serve with these public servants, I mean, it just doesn't get any better. Walter, you know, I love you sitting next to me all the time, and you bring so much to me. And, you know, I think he may have been on another one, just every meeting pushing me, like, don't go, Margaret.
Don't go.
Margaret, you've been here almost a whole 20 with me, just about, and I do believe in transit, and I do believe we've got a lot more work to do, and we've got a lot more voices to put out here to make certain that transit is in the forefront of the minds of so many people in the city. It has to be. It has to be for the people that we serve. It has to be for ourselves. It just has to be. And so we're here to do this. Y'all talked me into it, so we got to ride it together, y'all.
Let's go.
Ride it.
I would only close with the legend of Janet Miller as the best salesperson in the greater Nashville metropolitan area.
Got it done.
Because when she called me, I said, you can try, but I've been working on it for 3 months and it's a no-go.
It was a no-go. I was like chilling.
Nope.
You know?
That was a happy day.
I
This
know,
is a happy
I know. Thank you all so much. With that, I think we are adjourned
day. Thank you.
into the thunderstorms, I guess.
Okay.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.